Welcome back to Stab the Dragon Productions for episode number 268, as we celebrate a pop culture icon, Ian Fleming, the creator of the James Bond, Agent 007. Today is his birthday. Coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas on Thursday, May 28th, 2026, where it is currently 84 degrees with thunderstorms inbound. I occasionally like to celebrate the birthdays of literary people or six branches of the armed forces, special holidays, etc. So what I found out today was the birthday of Ian Fleming. Of course, I wanted to make a martini. Now, people are very familiar with the James Bond movies, less so with the books that the movies are based on, and much less familiar with the actual author, Ian Fleming. So let's start with a little brief biography. Ian Fleming was born May 28, 1908 in London, England. He came from a wealthy banking family, and his father, Valentine Fleming, was also a member of Parliament. Yet he went to war in World War I as a member of the Queen's Own Oxfordshire Hussars Sea Squadron, so cavalry. And he was killed by a German artillery barrage in 1917. So, just brief commentary on that. Notice, a member of Parliament volunteered to go into the army and go to the front. A rich person volunteered to go into the army and go to the front, where he paid the ultimate sacrifice. And that shows the ethos of the day, where rich people, government leaders would willingly participate in the military and go to war. Now, Ian Fleming attended Eton, prestigious prep school, and then from there he went to Sandhurst, the military academy for England, but he did not finish the course. He was considered a womanizer there, and then he moved to Europe and started college in Austria and then Geneva. So when he finished with college, he applied for the British Foreign Service jobs, but was not hired. And eventually he got on with Reuters News Agency through a contact that his mother had. And in the 1930s, he did go into the family business of banking and stockbroker. But in 1939, as the war started, he joined the Royal Navy Volunteer Reserve and worked in naval intelligence. And throughout the war, he contributed many key, important deception plans, propaganda plans, spy plans, espionage stuff. Some of those are famous. I'm not going to go into all the details here. One episode, he worked with, those of you who are familiar with an American effort in World War II, he worked with Colonel Wild Bill Donovan from the American OSS, Office of Strategic Services, which went on to become the CIA. And so in the shadow wars of espionage, propaganda, strategic deception, Ian Fleming was actually a hero. During World War II also, his fiancée was killed in a German bombing raid that hit London in 1944. After the war, Fleming went back to the newspaper business for a while. He published Casino Royale, April 13th of 1953, saying that James Bond, Agent 007, was a composite of the real spies and commandos that he had met in the war. Fleming died August 12th, 1964. James Bond novels. So here's a list of his novels. Casino Royale, 1953. Live and Let Die, 1954. Moonraker, 1955. Diamonds Are Forever, 1956. From Russia with Love, 1957. Dr. No, 1958. Goldfinger, 1959. Thunderball, 1961. The Spy Who Loved Me, 1962. On Her Majesty's Secret Service, 1963. You Only Live Twice, 1964. The Man with the Golden Gun, 1965. And, notably, one children's book. Any idea what children's book this kind of guy would write? Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, published in 1964. Go figure. Love that book, love the movie, obviously, but totally different genre from James Bond. Go figure. All right, now the films of James Bond starring Sean Connery. I'm not going to go through all the films, but just the Sean Connery ones. Dr. No, 1962. From Russia with Love, 63. Goldfinger, 64. Thunderball, 65. You Only Live Twice, 67. Now, these movies I do remember from my youth, but usually after they came out on TV, because I was pretty young back then and did not go to the theater for movies such as that. Probably my parents were, kind of aware of that, because there's obviously a lot of womanizing going on in these movies. James Bond seems to be somewhat of a amoral character. And so, but it is in the movie Casino Royale, and I think that's been made twice at least. I think the Daniel Craig version is really pretty good, and in that version is where we get the Martini Vesper, and he even details the ingredients in there as James Bond requests that particular martini, and it's really a creation, I guess, of James Bond in the movie. And so he gives a detail of all the ingredients to the waiter and tells him how to do it. Now, I am missing some of the ingredients for that, so I just have a regular martini that I like to have. And I don't use, some of the martinis I make, I use gin, and some I use vodka. However, the vodka that I use is not your standard vodka. Standard vodka, regardless of who makes it, is odorless, colorless, and tasteless. And for me, pointless. I don't know. But for a martini, I use a Texas vodka from Iron Wolf called Giddy Up. This is a horseradish vodka. Imagine that. So there's traces of horseradish flavor in here. I don't know how they make it, but that gives me enough flavor to work with. And then I like a dirty martini sometimes. So you can see the olives. I got 3 olives in there. A little bit of olive brine poured in, and then it's got some dry vermouth. So that's one of the martinis that I prefer. And I don't do many martinis. I'm a whiskey guy, but I figured for Ian Fleming's birthday anniversary, I could do a martini. Now, what is the meaning of James Bond? What is the point of it all? Ian Fleming has said in interviews that a lot of the characters in his stories are kind of he takes the names of people he actually knew and the names of some places. And like one place he lived was actually called Goldeneye, right? And then he actually knew a guy named James Bond. But the characterization of James Bond, he says, is built on kind of a composite of all the different characters that he knew during the war, as far as commandos and spies and whatnot. So he takes bits and pieces of their lives and puts it together into James Bond, and that's something similar. And in fact, you see F. Scott Fitzgerald do that as well in The Great Gatsby. If you study Fitzgerald's life and study the book and read what he says about it, I mean, there's actually people he knew that he includes in there. And that's a common thing with authors. But what's the greater value and meaning of the James Bond series? I mean, obviously I'm going to focus on the movies now because I've actually not read any of the books other than Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. But I've watched most of the movies. A lot of the modern ones I've not watched. But all the older ones with Sean Connery and Roger Moore, I've watched those. And so to me, the time period in which he was writing and that the movies came out was during the Cold War, the post World War II England. England had suffered so many casualties in World War I and World War II that their population was actually in decline. And the philosophy that overtook England was rooted in leftism, liberalism. And so the empire was a thing of the past. They were in rapid decline, economically, socially, population-wise. They were giving up all of their colonies all around the world. And so it was a time of decline. For a lot of patriots, that would have been incredibly painful and difficult. And so he's writing a superhero for Great Britain who does wondrous things with wondrous technology. And so there's a heavy technology emphasis in James Bond. But there's also all of these evil characters. Well, what was the world facing in the 1950s and 60s? The evil empire, the Soviet Union, obviously. We had just accomplished, demolishing the Nazi evil empire. And so now we've got the other evil empire. And so you're at war basically with them. Now, the way that Fleming does this is various independent evil people who set up things. The Russian government is involved with some, but some of it's just criminals gone amok and evil scientists and things like that. But nonetheless, it's an us versus them. As amoral as James Bond is, the things that he does, all the womanizing and whatnot, nonetheless, there's a good versus evil that pervades the whole. And so you have this amoral weapon, James Bond, Agent 007, who goes out to defend England. He fights for the good against the evil and wins. And so it is a hopeful story as well as bringing a stark contrast between good and evil. And it shows the advancement of technology. So in some ways, the books, well, the movies at least, are to me, a positive influence on society, saying, look, sometimes you have to have pretty much of a scoundrel and rogue fighting for your team to defeat the larger evil. And that's James Bond. So that's just my quick take on James Bond and the enjoyment of the Martini, even if it's not Bond's famous Vesper Martini. All right. Well, this is Stab the Dragon Productions for Ian Fleming's birthday. Out here.